This session is called the Resting Sage Collection. Okay, so it has a name, it has a sequence. We're in a little curriculum right now for back care. So I want you to have your bolster at the base, and at the base meaning where your feet are going to be. Okay, so your base is your feet generally. So when you're lying back, you're going to have a squishy ball. So I would highly recommend you using something that's squishy, not a tennis ball. And when you lie back, you're going to first recline from the back of the pelvis to the lower back. Kind of feel, when we go up and down bridge pose, now we're going back this direction, but we hardly ever take that time to lower back. We're always going up and down the spine. So when we're reclining, I want you to first begin with just simple ball center of the knees. Clear your space in the side yard so you don't knock over anything, okay? And your arms are going to stretch open to goalpost position, okay? So we're going to start with lower back, I would say pure back care, and then we're going to move our way up into the ribs and the respiratory muscles, okay? So I know some of us love those back bends and chest openers. We'll get them. Okay, so the knees to your chest-ish, so you find what the range of motion is for your back as you draw the knees in. And then take some moments here with the back of the pelvis, feeling when the knees draw in together, just a mild squeeze of the ball. And if you don't feel like you can really touch into the wholeness of that ball, like maybe you feel like the ball's about ready to fall out, push it down a little bit. Not saying anyone has it incorrect, but be sure as you draw the knees in, you can also add that squeezing inwards with the knees, okay? Now with the feet relaxed, right, you might have to kind of flip them from flex to point a little bit and just feel where they're neutral, okay? Arms are open, and we're just going to let the knees draw side to side without parking the knees in the center for too long. If you have to park your knees in the middle, that's okay, but we'll spend about a minute just going across the pelvis and the feeling of kind of community of pelvis and hips. It's like it's a community in there. It's a community of muscles. And relax how you're squeezing into the ball at this point. Feel how your opportunity is to move the knees probably further to the side from time to time. So what I like to do sometimes is to make some bumpers with my blocks on the side yard, okay? So I know that I go over evenly from side to side, because I can't really tell, right? I don't know if I'm moving my knees further down to the right or the left. I think I know, but my muscles might be tricking me in my lower back. So noticing your arms opening the chest and feel that pulley across your ribs. Okay, the feet are touching, right? They're together possibly. They might even be crossing each other, but you want to feel that your movement is addressing this lower back and pelvis into the lower back area. So I'm going to move my knees inwards a little bit more towards my chest just to massage across the back, a little bit higher. And then we're just going to make circles. So with the movement of the pelvis, making circular motion. So as you move, you might even skim the surface of the bolster, which is not a requirement. But if you do go that low with the feet, just be careful it's not kind of tightening the hip flexors too much. So there's no, even competition with yourself to exert more force. And it's as if you're trying to kind of center into your, the limitations we all have, where we find sometimes we go a little over the edge and we don't know it till we got there. So find where it's soothing in your back muscles and then go the other direction. This is a really interesting layer of movement because we are kind of stimulating, holding onto the ball, but we are allowing this progression of movement to massage across the back. Okay. All right. So next time you find yourself coming back in through to center, lower your feet to the bolster. Okay. If it's not intact, you can't push your feet down, you could scoot towards the bolster. I wouldn't spend energy pulling it with your feet, because that could ignite a little tension. So make sure as your elbows are by your sides, like you have these robot arms, elbows right by the sides. And as I push into the feet, and I have the ball center of the knees, I'm going to lift the hips up. And then I'm going to lower down and feel more of the spinal column. Okay, now the arms can move overhead as you lift and lower. And if it doesn't feel successful with your feet on the bolster, you could certainly try your feet on the floor. Okay, the bolster will allow you to get higher up when you lift the hips, higher up on the spine and the shoulders. So hips lifting, arms overhead. Breathe and lower down. Okay, take a few more moments here, lifting and lowering. And I want you to keep the ball center of the knees. As you lower down this next time, you're going to grab a block. And as you lift the hips up, you're going to slide the block under the back of your pelvis at the lowest setting. Okay, you might have to kind of wag your tail to find where the block supports your back. Okay, so for me today, I want my block actually a little higher, and sometimes I'll have it a little lower. Now there's not much terrain to put the block. It's not as if you can actually easily get it higher on the back, right? So you're sliding it under and you still have the ball center of the knees. And I'd say go sand free on this. Just feel the movement balance of your diaphragm, right? So you can feel the belly fill up like a balloon and relax back towards the heart, okay? So we're going to keep the ball there for a little bit longer. So I want you to find the balance of a little bit of squeezing, okay, not quite your maximum, right? Maybe about 30% of energy in there. And then feel what it's like to start to relax that intensity of pushing into the ball, but still monitoring that you're holding it. So the pelvic floor still has to kind of stay awake, right? And there's a tilt at the hinge of the hips, okay? And then we're going to bring the hip hinge, so you can kind of feel right here at the hip hinge, the thigh lids, I like to call it, right above the thigh lids. And then I'm going to bring my knees to squeeze into the ball, squeeze, and lift my feet, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And then we'll bring the legs to straighten up and extend. And they might not go all the way to straight. They may stay with a lot of bend, because you do have something round right center of the knees, the ball. So you might find it's not going to feel right to just try to extend and hyperextend, right? You're going to need that kind of cushioning reaction in the knees. So the arms could be goalpost. I like when I'm kind of starting to go into a cycle of inversions, especially earlier in the day. I can move my arms overhead, right? My arms are reaching because I am kind of trying to keep some energy in my system. And versus the arms down below the heart when it's towards the end of the day practicing. Okay, now if you can circle your feet, now you might not see my feet, but I have my legs lifted and I'm circling my feet. So as I rotate, if possible, close your eyes and relax the brain. Okay, and feeling breath, which is kind of automatic here to survive. But see if you can just find the layer of attention to small movements in the feet, circulating, and then just relaxing the feet and reverse the flow. Now the block can be intense, right? So you might find you move your legs a little bit back, not further away from your hips. You might find you have to hinge at the hips a lot, so there's less pressure and spots of the back, right? Especially around the tailbone. So you want to think about the base of the spine kind of widening before we put the ball there, okay? So using this pose to strengthen, right, gently stimulate the core muscles and the back muscles. As we bend into the legs, we're going to take the ball out. That way, if you need to go one leg at a time down, it's easier, okay? Yeah, sometimes it's nice to come up with both and then come down with one at a time. And then arms go down, you're going to push into your feet. And as you lift the hips up, slide the block out. And then we're going to place the ball at the base of the spine, sacrum tailbone area. And as you lower down on the ball, let all your weight first go onto the ball. Right? You might actually be so far down pushing onto it, you almost think you're touching the floor with parts of the rear. So I want you to really sink in so the ball can kind of push into those tissues, and then let your hips go side to side. So I take my feet a little wider on the bolster, okay? And I'm just working on using that softer ball to soothe the connective tissue, right? It may not entirely melt your tension entirely. It may not melt all discomfort, but it certainly lets the tissue soften instead of tensing, right? It's a nice little delivery right through the skin layer, through the little bit of focus in the abdominals as you go side to side, wagging your tail. That's the key. Hips moving side to side. Okay, and you might have the tendency to kind of push in, with one side of the glute, like the buttock area. But just try to let the ball go across the lower back tissues, right? So I've got the ball here. It's not like going to stay on my glute. Eventually we'll go there, okay, but no rush. Okay, so as you come back into center, okay, bring your right foot up and cross it to the left knee. And then figure 4, bring the knees in towards the chest area and hold the back of the left thigh. One option. I actually kind of like to linger in this one and just feel how my balance, trying to find a balance support here. So I let the knees draw in with gravity's influence, knees in. I like this versus hugging and pulling, okay? Some of us want to feel like, oh yes, that's intense. I feel the hip, but it's kind of a jerking motion for the joint. So, notice if you need that hold, that reassurance that you're kind of, plugged into the pose, that's okay. I can see how that could be helpful. I can see how arms out is just a little too like waterbed feeling, like you can't quite stay in center, but that's kind of the point of it, is to bring a little bit of stimulation into the core muscles, right? The posterior core. Okay, now the leg can kick up, the left leg can kick up, or it can stay bending, as if you're pushing that left knee in towards the right foot. It's a pretty intelligent stretch, all things considered, huh? And then we're going to bring the other side over. So bring the left foot to the right leg. Remember, you can be hands-free. You can also be hand on the leg when you switch. So right leg away, left foot in. You can switch with your foot on the bolster. Okay? There's no competition. All right. And what I really invite you to do is to feel awareness in these borders of our pelvis and our hip, all the attachment sites. So as our bones kind of articulate loading, because we are kind of loading the bones in these shapes as well. Yeah, you might go, wow, I can go in so many different directions with this just one area of my body. And the idea is to collaborate, let the muscles have a little bit of collaborating to create some effective releasing techniques, right? So you can hug the back of the right thigh. You can let the arms relax by your sides. You can change it up from side to side. But as you're feeling the sense of the ball kind of helping stretch the tissues of the back. Okay, now as we release any clasp we have with the hands or the left foot from the right knee, we're going to uncross and bring your feet back to the bolster. Lift your hips a little bit and move your ball over to the right rear. Okay, so you're moving it over a couple inches. It's just pointing out from the sacrum area over to, you're kind of gliding it. You want to think sacral iliac area, but maybe a little bit down. But it's going to depend on what feels good for you. Okay, so it's all independent. Independent decision here. Now I've got both feet on the bolster and my ball is at the right buttock area, the rear tissues and my glute muscles, and I'm trying to glide across the musculature. Okay, you're trying to get a little more mature, musculature maturity in your ability to glide on the glute. And part of it is we're on our backs, we have a different perception maybe of this area. It's usually sitting or it's standing. So in any case, right, we're working a bit with our core muscles as we're pushing across something that's not, stable. It's something you're trying to balance on. Okay? So as you go across, you can let your eyes close, you can keep them open, but kind of feel the texturizing of the muscle, the connective tissue right over it. So that's what we're really guiding into, is soothing the connective tissue before we get into some poses. We've basically been doing a lot of myofascial release right in the beginning here. Okay. Now when we glide down to the left rear, take the ball away on the right side so you're not gripping your glute, and then go to the left side. Again, we don't want to squeeze the muscle to get the ball under or contract it before we massage it. But now I just tuck the ball to the left side. You don't want to go too far in or too far down either. Just kind of feel, okay, this is the rear, there goes the ball, and then I just move my hips and glide up on top of it. Almost like the simpler approach you have, the more perfect it is, right? Don't overthink how you're going to get there. And you might find that you want to lift a leg up as you're rolling across, not the leg that's not attached to the ball. Okay, and as you're gliding, you can go side to side, you can go fast, you can go slow. And sometimes you just stay on a spot that feels that you resonate with, trying to release the tension there. With the softer ball, it definitely takes more surface, covers more surface area. It's a little more consistent, broad stroke on the muscle versus, something like a tennis ball. So this is very, not a pain approach to releasing tension. It's soothing. Okay. Much more soothing than the harder ball. Okay, now as we push across, and again, better for other things, other systems in the body. Okay? No pain response here. Okay, now as we push across, I want you to start to move into a leg crossover. So we're going to move any props that we have kind of existing on the right side yard. That's from the hip down. And then you're going to roll, and keep in mind, I would say windshield wiper, so knees side to side for a few moments before you get attached to a shape that we're going to be mobilizing out of where we were rolling. Okay, so a little windshield wiper to get some heat. And again, now striking across even into the side band of the leg. And then with caution, you're going to bring your left foot to push into the side of the bolster, and then just push it over carefully to the right side. Grab a hold of the short end of the bolster, the handle, and place it on the right side of your mat. And what I like on this one is I've been working with, I feel my knees up a little bit, my feet off the ground, and then I just rest my side of my right thigh on the floor, my right hip and thigh, and then I swing the left leg over to the bolster. So you try to get this contour of movement, this rotation in the pelvis moving up into the thoracics. Okay, all right. So once you're in thoracic park, okay, we're going to take a ball, maybe, ball is an option for sure, to the back of the pelvis. That's an anchor only. It's not going to be something you're going to be pushing on and trying to massage. It's just an anchor. And then take a sandbag if that's possible. Now we'll add a little bit of weight. We're going to slowly start weighting into the hip. So my sand is on the outer left thigh, or you're going to keep it proper on the hip. So perpendicular or horizontal. You be the decider. I would try what you're used to, and then maybe if you want to kind of dial into the muscle belly, sometimes it feels good to kind of jostle the tissue a little bit like rocking. It's always therapeutic. This is one where if you need your blanket higher, you can opt to move it a little bit higher, but not under your neck. Ideally, it's going to be from the occiput back, so you can still keep that arch in the upper spine, right? So the throat still has elongation in that part of the spine, and the left arm is open, okay? So feeling when the chest stretches open. Takes a rotation through the shoulder. And when you have that reach of the hip out of the pelvis, where there's like these two different areas. We got the arch of the lower back. We've got the movement of the leg to stretch our back. So it's kind of a nice invitation as well to go up into the chest. And then feeling if you want your head to turn or not. Okay, now when we shift, what I want you to emphasize here is to keep the knees from the hips down. So we're not going to pull them into the chest, but it's okay to windshield wiper. Or this can sometimes be inviting too, is to do a couple drawbridges, right? So I have my feet, you know, they're turning out slightly. I don't have a ball between the knees at all, but I'm lifting my hips up and then massaging down the spine. Okay, but I don't have my feet on the bolster now, so it's a little bit less positioning angle on the spine, right? You're not going to get as longer or more extended, but it also brings that heat into the hips that you've been stretching. Now you're in the hip flexors. Okay, the next time you lower down, okay, rest the knees together. So constructive rest pose, knees together, feet are going to turn in. Okay, so you can rest the band or the IT band here, but they have to touch, right? You don't want them crossing over each other. Okay, so now with caution, you know, grab your bolster on the right side, move it over to side 2, and try this thing out when you're swiveling into your hip. Like, I'm just trying to find, when I watch people do these, I'm noticing that the bottom leg is oftentimes a little too straight. And then that kind of catches in the hip and doesn't give you as much rotation and ease and kind of lubrication in this mid body. We're trying to get this motion. Okay. So try it. Just let the left leg rest so your knee is pointing out, and then you're swiveling at the hip to let the right leg over. Okay. It's kind of nice to do if you can't really see. So instead of just like leg down, swing over, it's like trying to get this swivel movement. And when we were rolling on the ball, I was trying to get that going for you, right? Because when you're on the ball, you're going across, right? You're basically wagging your tail. So this should have a little bit of that too, okay? So bolster on the left side, leg reaches. Yeah, I could have my bottom leg a little more bendy, but we all have different leg situations going on. Some of us, you know, have a little more protection on a knee or a part of our spine. So you have to find what works for you, whether you use the ball or not at the back of your pelvis. Yeah, I generally like it. I think it's good to have that touch there, that kind of security and that anchor, if anything. And even though you know it's just a ball, your skin doesn't know that necessarily. Your nervous system knows it's just a ball. You know, it's safe touch. So I think it's still good to get that when you can, especially safe touch with a prop on you to encourage the skin, uh, that circulation in the lymph vessels. Just a little touch. Doesn't have to be more than that. So with that sand on the outer right thigh, I have so many areas I can bring some focus in on this pose. So I just start simply kind of moving up the body. Feel the knee cross over. If it's a little shaky or your inner thigh is tightening up, it sometimes happens. You might have to put a blanket on top of the bolster or be more cautious with the sandbag. Maybe you don't use it. Maybe if the leg is telling you this is too much right now on this side today, you pass on it. Okay. Now with the left hand either resting on the abdominal, uh, the basically the lumbar lymph nodes here. So you're kind of thinking from diaphragm to pelvis with the hand is an idea just for feeling the movement of the breath. You kind of bear witness to your breathing. Now you can turn your head to the right. You can keep your head in center. You're doing enough, even if you don't turn your head. So, kind of feel what is best for your neck, with your eyes relaxed, breathing slow, and notice if there's something you can let go. But it might be the inner thigh. It might be just trying to let the bones relax in the shape. Now tracing, just be here and trace the outline from bone structure. You can kind of feel that where the joints are. You're going to feel the compilation of energy, triggering the muscle pulling and the sensation. But really trace from the hip up the core, because we're going to start moving up into the ribs in our sage experience. What was this class called? The resting sage collection. So pretty soon we're going to go into that. So we're kind of building it from the base up. So I want you just to feel how the right leg crosses over. All right. And as we start to proceed upwards in the body, there's no rush, right? You kind of want to go slow and really kind of bear witness to the movement cycle, upwards. So take the sand off. I would move the sand to the left because you're going to want it easily accessible to get on you again. So move the sand over to the left side. I have one thing I don't want to forget, though, actually, on the back. So as you come back, you're going to carefully bring your right knee a little bit up on that left side. Just kind of move it up so it's easier on your back muscles to come to the back. Slide the left leg to the right and carefully roll onto the back, push into your feet. Place the ball behind the left knee, okay? And you're going to lower the right foot down and just circle that left leg with the ball behind the knee, okay? Now my right knee's pointing out because it's worried the left leg's going to hit it, I think. I'm not sure. But I want you to feel like you can dial in around that left leg, so the ball behind the knee. And I guess if you have a ball that's really, really big, that might be just too much. But it's nice to touch the back of the knee only with something soothing. Okay. But you know, that's a whole one of the main lymph points too, the back of the knee. So, you know, we hardly ever get something soothing to touch that spot. Okay. And then as you bring your left knee in, okay, try to feel your capacity and your muscles to bring the leg in without holding it. Like, what about this? You're clutching the ball. Do you have that ability in that left side of the pelvis and the left side of the abdominals? And you're descending colon. Who knows what it's saying right now? Hopefully it's all right, but it might be talking to you. Okay. So then you're going to bring the right knee in and take the ball over to the back of the right knee. Okay, I'm going to just kind of actually push it a little bit in, and then as my leg curls around it, kind of like that, and then circle. Now your other leg again could just kind of move with a pelvic motion. Yeah. We tried this at training with the leg down, but I didn't think that was a good idea with the back muscles. Personally, it kind of tightens them. So I like to keep a little softer approach with the back of the pelvis, with that little contour, that little flexion in the back, just a little bit. I forgot to say maybe go both directions, but I only remember on the second side. Okay. And feel how much leg muscle you're using to get this movement. It's okay to use some of it, right? All right, now this is the leg that's going to move back in our side sage. So this is an interesting compilation. So when we come out, we're going to move the ball over to the left, okay? I'd say it's okay to bring your knees in, but I would be as intrigued by how do you get up onto your hip. So you can roll any direction you want, but you probably are going to feel better to go to the left because that's where we're going. So maybe move your bolster back towards your shoulder, roll to the left, use your arms to help move the chest up, and then take a moment here with your bolster across your mat, and then grab a couple blankets. Put your blocks at the back, all the way to the back overhead of the blankets, and then stack a couple blankets. Okay. Yeah, we've got the lower back a little soothed, a little bit of heat and massage there, so hopefully this will be interesting way to absorb the sequence. So we're going to use the ball at the ribs. I'm going to bring my knees together, and I don't necessarily have them perfectly stacked. I kind of have to get out of that mindset. My focus, and if your hip doesn't like this, put a blanket or a towel under it. It's not worth feeling uncomfortable on your hip. Sometimes it's just too hard. So you're going to lean in, and the ball is at, so if you kind of think from the xiphoid area and then around to the rib, I was thinking like CPR button, which is a little below it, but you're going around, and then you lean in, okay? You want to have your legs, they don't have to be all the way in. This is kind of not a very good idea, right? You want to have this kind of contour, kind of a zigzag, okay? And then you're going to have the left arm on the floor. I'm going to keep saying that because people seem to put this on the blankets or they hold it up. But lean in and then open out through the arm, elbow bends, and then turn. So feeling the movement, which is really small in the ribs, right? It's only the left side that you want to touch down into. Okay, so if you don't want to have your arm moving, it's okay. You can have your hand on the bolster and just do some small movements. You can even let your head lower down and just breathe into the ball, okay? To me, this is a little more successful for me to connect to my rib cage, just breathing deeply and kind of pushing into the ball. Okay, now we're going to take the ball out. And we're going to bring the left leg as close as it comfortably connects to the bolster, but just not on top. Okay, ball goes under the right inner knee, and then we grab our sand, and we just place it up to that right hip. It's not always that easy since we haven't used sand very much today. You suddenly start adding it to things, but we'll slowly adapt here. Sand on the hip, and lie into your sides. Kind of feel, what is that about? Make sure this one you have plenty of height under your head because you don't want to get this tension in the neck, which happens when you try to hold your head up. So you might be surprised how much height you need here. Okay, first things first, let your head land into the blanket. Okay, maybe the right arm goes overhead to touch a block. Maybe it doesn't. I'm a fan of movement on this one, just to feel the movement of my ribs with my arm. And then if you can get to the movement of the ribs with just your breath. Because at some point we're going to be more still, right, in our bodies. So it's good to just kind of prepare. Okay. Preparing using your breath as a stretching tool. Expanding and relaxing. Now feeling where the side body has a perfect amount of reach. Doesn't have to be excessive, or the end range that you can qualify in your hip, right? Your hip doesn't need to qualify for the fullest range. What you want to feel is that it's almost soothing to breathe into it. You know, I like to think of these practices as like you want to pace yourself respectfully, right? So not too fast, just slow, long enough practice that your nervous system and your vascular system responds. Okay, now we're going to take a gentle twist. So move the sand down. I sometimes like to do this twist with the sand on my left thigh. Okay, I sometimes like this because, again, it's on the inner thigh, the leg pit, the groin. The sand could also be a little lower than that, but sometimes grounding is nice. And then the right knee rests to my left foot. Now, some of us will bring our knee a little further over, okay? Even kind of holding the sand there. So as you come up, this will be nice for the neck, just to take some change of movement. Since it was here, you might put your hands on the bolster or your elbows, even better. Okay, and just feeling like just a gentle twisted up dog is what I like to call this. Gentle motion with my abdominals to turn. And then if you've got a whole bunch of blankets here, I would take one aside. You don't have to make big moves and put it over somewhere. But you have one blanket at the base. You're going to pivot your bolster on top of that one blanket. And I'm going to pull the bolster so it's right next to my left hip. I might even move it a little bit to the left because it'll be easier for me to get my body to rest on it. And then place the blanket fold across the top. You get to decide how high this blanket is. Again, we don't want to push the neck too far this way, and we definitely don't want to push it too far this way. So you have to find when you lower down, I like to push the bolster down, then rest my core on it, and then my arms are open. So try when you're reaching your arms out to feel your head turning to the right and relaxing the left side of your head on the blanket. Okay. You might find your head moves a little to the right more than you thought, or maybe right smack dab to where you feel like it's straight up from the heart. And these points of reference from the heart to the chin, is kind of a random reality that you're going to get that, right? You're just going to try to focus on visualizing that as well. So relaxing the weight of your head down, breathing, and receiving. Now, if you want a more challenging twist, you can always lower down more, meaning you could take the blanket away that's under the bolster. I wouldn't remove the one on top because that's supporting your cervical vertebrae a bit. But if you feel like, oh, I just want a little more stretch in my ribs, that's an option. Okay, I think it's kind of nice just to be with something that's kind of in balance, right? It's not too much pressure, but sometimes we crave just a little bit more with a gentle twist. Right? So if I was to lower down, I would just slide my blanket out. Okay. And then I lower down, it's just a little more turn. And to me, I like something a little more soothing. Yeah, I used to feel like I needed end range. So when you're dealing with osteoporosis and so forth, you don't want to push at the end range and try to create more torque or leverage when you're taking the twist. It's like you want gravity to help you get into it, right? Just like gravity help you ease into this rotation. Okay, feeling the breath, relaxing the heart. Now slide the hands a little bit under the shoulder zone. So you might feel the fingers, the hand kind of open. Some of us, this doesn't work well with the wrist, right? So we might have our elbows kind of up over onto the blanket here when we come up. So, there are ways to get up without pushing into the hand so deeply. So, and then you're using your core more, right? So when you come up, it's kind of like tummy time. You're like lifting up through the chest and then maybe slide the hands just to get yourself to go up. Okay. Now let's take up some prone poses. Prone posing. Okay. So we're going to come on down to face down on the bolster. Okay. And what I want you to do is, actually, maybe let's get a little bit of length in the hamstrings first. So we're going to take the blanket aside. Some of us need blankets under our knees for these. So I got to get my blankets in order here. So I'm going to bring a blanket back so it'll be under my knees. And then I'm going to have the other blanket on the other side. When you create new sequencing, it's always interesting. Okay. All right. So hamstrings emphasis. Well, we usually do hamstring stuff when we hold the leg with a belt. That's kind of what we do in restorative most of the time. But here we're going to bring our hands or our elbows down. Let's say when you lift the knees up, this is just too much for you with your hands down. What you could do is you can have your elbows on the bolster, put the bolster across the mat like so. This works pretty good. Okay. But what I want us to get towards is actually a forward fold. So instead of holding this inverted V position, we're going to scoot the feet a little forward and then our hands way back to the feet and take a moment. You might stumble into it. Sometimes you stumble into a forward bend. But at some point, kind of feel the seat lifting up and your ribs lowering down. And a wall is really excellent for this. I think walls are so good for this because I can move my rear back to touch. And then I'm trying to get my seat a little bit higher, just a little bit, so that my spine can surrender. Door number one is this. Door number two would be hands just above the knees. If you're not near the wall, this can work kind of nicely. Hands above the knees, and just kind of feel that reach out of the ribs. Breathing. Okay, hold the elbows is probably my favorite option. Okay, elephant swing, moving my elbows side to side. Maybe taking your feet a little bit further apart might feel better. Not turning them out, but just stepping them a little bit out, still parallel. And then just feeling that positioning of the back, fully stretching. Yeah, feeling the facial bones go the other direction. Just think how many years they've gone one direction most of the day. Okay. So reverse the flow in the skin cells all here in the face, right? You can probably feel the face. Kind of enjoy that, right? Good thing to do it in the beginning part of the day. Okay. Now, when we start to come a little bit downwards, we're gonna, if you use your blanket, I just put it on my feet here. And then as I crawl on forward, I try to go one upper extremity at a time. And then when I step my feet back, I start to lower down my knees to table. And then I'm going to move my hips a little forward, the front of my hips forward to stretch out my core. Yeah, and lower down. Come all the way so the elbows are on the floor. If your blanket's in the way, just push it and then let your elbows be straight down. So they're kind of squeezing into your bolster, right? So feel the difference when your legs aren't squeezing anything, right? They're not squeezing a ball. You've done a lot of that today. So they're just resting a little bit apart, but your elbows are squeezing a little bit into the bolster. Okay. So just let your upper back muscles be accountable right now. So wake up upper back. Okay, now slide the hands back so they're, comfortably under the shoulder line. And then this can be a little bit of a bell, right, for me, like, should I lift up? Should I lower down? Like a little bit of an alarm. Okay, so I feel my elbows by my sides. And then I'm going to bring my hands back besides my thighs, turn the palms in, shoulders back, lift the chest, breathe. It only helps. I find this pretty interesting when time is going on in my body. So when I have my hands down, I do tummy time. I'm not a big fan of this as much as I'm a fan of this. So I have to add my shoulders, the strength in my shoulders moving back, that not pushing, like not forcing in my wrists. Okay, now lower down. Thank goodness. Bring your blanket in, bring your elbows out. I would slide a little forward if it's comfortable enough on your chest. So you're pressing a little bit into it and your forehead is down on your hands. This time your legs might be closer. Just kind of scoot them in so the feet might touch and feel the spine centering. I mean, it's as centered as it gets at this point. You've done some baby back bends, which kind of corralled the muscles and kind of braided them in, right? The sides of the spine, kind of those muscles kind of collaborated in for your back bend. And now just try to take the time to let your head relax. And now gently lift your head, but not as much as you're going to add your arms to this. So instead of pushing your head too far up, just lift it up a little bit. You can peek. Okay. Slide your hands back so they're under the shoulders. Shoulders shrug back. Okay. So this is your basic locust beginning, or actually cobra pose, right? And cobras don't have limbs. Yeah, I remember hearing that in training, like, oh, yeah, they don't have limbs. So I got to use my spine. Okay. So feeling if you're contracting in your glutes. Right? How much are you contracting? Right? Are you able to wake them up? So feel the tops of the feet on the floor. Feel that connection back into the glutes. It's the littlest of lifts. Okay. And then as we bring the hands under and we come back to a back release of choice. So many of us child's pose, yeah, it's a so-so idea for our knees. So some of us knees wide, forehead down. Great idea. Some of us, nope. Okay, so if you're in nope for the knees, one option, as many of us know, is to put a blanket roll on our calves. I think just a blanket, period, on the calves is enough. But I'm not gonna try to push my weight back on my feet. I'm gonna stretch my arms forward on my bolster like this and let my hips just be lifted. Okay, so you could have the blanket under your knees. You might be able to sit back onto the blanket. It might work out. But you could, again, have blanket under the knees, blanket on the calves for those of us knee Knees stressed, right? Knees pointing out. And take a few moments here. Again, none of us have to use a bolster like that. Some of us bolster will be under the forehead only. This is ideal. This one is ideal for the neck. And now as you come up, we're going to turn the bolster across the mat, back to horizontal. And we're going to set ourselves into that rib roll in the right rib. So grab your blankets, toss them overhead, and we're going to come into our rib roll on the right. So we're getting ready for the sage experience. Okay. All right. The sage collection. So lean into the right hip, the resting sage collection. Knees stacked. Ball to the ribs, elbow down. This rib side feels tighter for me when I lean in. It's like, oh. So it might be your shirt. Sometimes remember it's your clothing sometimes. Like don't feel like, oh, this is all bunched up. Maybe that's why it doesn't feel as good. So just notice what's going on first. Get close to the bolster, as close as you can be with the body weight on the ball. And then open and turn. And just feel the movement across the ribs, breathing. Okay. And now when you feel this movement through the rib spaces, right, it's not a whole large amount of terrain that you're rolling, but it is kind of sparking up some dialogue in there with the receptors, right? When you're touching into the skin, right, you're pushing naturally with gravity. And then take the ball to that left inner knee and grab your sand. And we're going to lean down to that right side and place the sand at the left hip. Now, if this is too much for you, pushing things around sand-wise, you don't have to use a sandbag. And then when you lie on the side, kind of feel enough. Now, it's not necessarily from your ear resting. It's the bones of the skull, the parietal bones that you're touching onto on the blanket, the side, the parietal. So what I find is when I lean in, I might kind of rock a little bit on the side of my skull, right? And I want to get that area kind of relaxed. So if I put my hand to the side of my neck here, notice if it's, there's going to be a certain amount of tone because of the stretch. But if it's, uncomfortable or shaky, you need more blanket height, okay? So left arm reaches overhead, maybe not, okay? And just feeling as you're extending in the waist, right, that reach, and this doesn't have to be, you don't have to have your arm moving, it could be down by your hip or on your hip. Yeah, there's two different kind of layers of awareness, right? It's going to be resting, sensing where the circulation is in the pose. And for some of us, it's going to be slightly activating, just activating the breathing muscles. Just feeling in from the hip up this kind of mystery area of movement in the sidominals. Yeah, anytime we go into a side reach or even into the twist, it's a kind of an extension of abdominal muscles, right? That is a little different when we think of the frontominals are really what we point to, right? So when we start to combine these movements, We're going to move the sand. I'm just going to carefully place it on the right thigh, the groins there. And then when I roll with my ribs into that bolster, I'm going to grab the ball, move it aside, bring my left thigh to my right foot, and then slowly start to make this turn. You can have your elbows on the bolster and feel where you're moving from. So your lumbar, the lower back area, you want to keep the natural curve. But in your thoracics, right, above the L1, right, that's where you can start to create some movement. Okay, so go slow. I'm going to use all the blankets. I'm just going to not go too low. But if you don't want to have your as much height, it'll make it more twisty. Okay, twisted lung. Okay, twisted liver. Okay, you be the decider, right? And again, if you've got some concern on vertebrae, and I would force it. There's no reason to force the twist to be more. You're just trying to work with increasing circulation, hydration in these tissues, right? Mobility, elasticity in the ribs. That's all. So as you lower down, you're going to let your head turn to the left, and you be the decider, right? So do I have to move my heart a little to the right? And you might feel like, it's just too much effort. So just lower down, let your arms relax open, and your head rest into the blankets. And then just deciding that you've arrived in the right position, right? You don't have to move a lot, but you're welcome to move. There's no pose police, right? So if you decide to move a little bit, that's fine. But just resting the weight of the side of your head. Okay, now slide the hands in, coming up. Okay, so let's go ahead and come back into horizontal chest opener. If you're feeling like that's too much pressure in your back, at this part we are pretty warmed up for it, this would be a modification. And so I would take the bolster this way, so you just keep it on a ramp, right? You bring your sacrum here and rest back, arms open, okay? If you decide, oh no, I can go with that, I think my ribs are warmed up enough, you would just turn your bolster across. I have 2 blankets because, you never know what you're going to find out when you get there. So you better be prepared how your back's going to respond. And I'd say a block in front of your bolster would be important. So there's other modifications like fish pose. There's other ones that you can do besides this for a chest opener. So you would take your block at the back of your pelvis. You would just perch up on it, okay? And then when you lower back, arms are open. This is a good one for a deluxe weight amount, like for the sandbag. So make it a little more deluxe by having some impression of weight. Now the weight could be, focusing on diaphragm. So I have it a little bit lower, okay? I've never been a real fan of that one. I always feel a little claustrophobic with it for some reason. So I'm kind of the heart to the belly version. It could be since I've had colon surgery. It could be all kinds of reasons that's that way for me, but I just never liked the sound of Italy. It's a threat, but it's often taught for sandbag breathing. This is where it's taught. And all the trainings for strengthening your breathing muscles. You're going to put it here. Then they're going to have this as secondary. Okay, but this is how I like to go with it. So if the tailbone feeling is a lot feeling good, remember you can move your hips a little further down. Sometimes the block at the sacrum is better than at the coccyx. At the tailbone, it just pokes a little too much. So just remember, you have more parts than just the tailbone to touch the block too. And it's different at this part of the class too. You've had different ways of moving these areas. The arms are open and just finding where the neck feels good. Now I don't need all those blankets. It's just too many. So I'm just going to lower my head a little bit so I can stretch my chin slightly up, just a little bit, and just feeling that circulation in my upper respiratory tree. Bronchial tubes, throat, lungs. Just receiving your breath. Okay, we're going to kind of fine tune this final spinal. So we're going to go back towards the back lane in a few moments into the spine world and the leg world. We're going to blend them together towards the end here. So take the moments here where you're completing your breath. So if you have the weight on you, it's going to feel like you can't create as much length with your breath because you've got weight. So the work is in that, the resistance, right? You're trying to find this. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So pace yourself. Feel the response of the breath in and out. Okay, now we're going to move the sand and we're actually going to come back into inversion, which we did in the beginning, but just with a block. So now we're going to add the bolster under the pelvis. So go down to one blanket, slide back a little bit with your feet so that you can walk them back, and then the only issue is that sometimes your neck is on the blanket, so you might want to move it back a bit. And then push the bolster down so it replaces the block, okay? And then when you lift up, you want to be sure your bolster isn't too far down. So if you notice your back is not really liking it, the bolster needs to be further up. Always the rule of the tailbone. So you're centered on the bolster, but the tail is, you can feel the tailbone kind of lurching over this side, okay? All right, so get a belt, okay? And I want you to buckle up so you got a big loop, okay? And then bend your knees if you can bring your belt to your feet or your feet to your belt, whichever comes first. And then slide the feet out. And so I got my belt, the loop is awfully big. I'm going to have to make that a little bit smaller. Okay, too much. Okay, so what's the width of it for you? It's going to be, for all of us, it'll be individual. Some of us will feel pretty much okay with it, pretty far out, but kind of think on, when we do wide stance poses, let's say you're in a yoga class and you do standing wide stance forward fold. This is about the range you want to repeat on your back for the circulation of the hips. But for some of us, this is more challenging because it requires abdominal strength to do this upside down. Not so much standing as much as on the back. Okay, so just let your legs stretch outwards. Okay, feeling if it's a little shaky, what do? You make the loop a little bit smaller. Always the case. And you can bend your knees. You can bring your hands right to where the diaphragm is motioning downstream, although the abdominal organs are pushing on it right now. So you have a little bit of efforting going on in your core. You're just pacing yourself. We're always working on endurance in this class for the breathing muscles. Okay, so now that I'm in leg float, which is legs out, I'm going to bend the knees, and what we're going to do is grab a hold of the belt, and let's focus primarily on the idea of leg float. So left leg goes down, right leg is up, and I want you to keep the loop, but instead of putting the belt behind your head, unless you just have to, some people just have to, You're going to bring your palms together, and the belt's going to be between the webbing of the thumb and the index at the thenar space here, together if possible, and then extend overhead. If you've got one shoulder that's not capable of that, you can bring one overhead, right? Some people, if they're rehabbing the shoulder, they ain't going to move the other shoulder. So you've got to find what works for you today. I like touching the wall for this one. It just happened to work out. I feel kind of lucky because then my foot's not turning out so much, right? So I'm just pushing with the bottom foot, just at the ball of the foot, but that's not required. Some people, when they push the bottom foot, it tightens the right side of the pelvis into the SI. So you got to find what's helpful for you. Okay, so the right hamstring is getting a little bit of circulation here. Okay. Now, as you slide the left foot in, push into the left foot first so you can feel the connection of the left foot pushing and the right leg moving a little downwards, 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 downwards. Keep it going. And then it's easy to get the left foot into the belt and switch. Yep. Pretty nice. Right foot down. We don't change the hands much. And the hands are handling this leg situation. They're very handy. Okay, so as you're pressing into the right foot, you might slide the leg down. If you notice, if you're touching the wall and you notice this side doesn't push as well as the other, you likely have a little bit of imbalance. Welcome to your body, right? So if you have your foot on the floor, which I like too, it feels a little more comfy in my back. So yeah, you're the one living in this body, so you might have to make choices that are a little more soothing sometimes in this class, right? Not always too much. Sometimes it feels good to exert a little bit. So feeling that reverse gravitational pull on the leg muscles. And this is going to bring us to legs up. So this is what I'm going to offer. So if you're in the middle of the room and you decide, you know what, I'm going to do legs up in the middle without the wall, you could put your sand on the feet and do legs up. You would get extra credit for the core. It's not as soothing though. It's a little more activating. So if you're not using the wall anyway for the last pose, you might decide, okay, I'll bend my knees, I'll take my belt off, and I'll add my sand. And maybe when we get towards the last few moments, you come down. So you can stay here if you feel like, I just want some change. This class has been a lot of changes in it. So you can add the sand here and go up. I'm going to show legs at the wall because I think some of us might do that. Okay, so that's an option. Okay, might be a good one for you. You might go, that's great. I'm going to take that one on. Some of us are going to go, no. I do traditional things, so you might push the bolster down, carefully go to one side, pull your blanket down, park your bolster. Okay, and you could have your block here, by the way. You could have your block there for this one. Park your bolster at the wall and come on up. You can make bolster bench, right? You could put your blocks in your bolster, okay? And as you go upside down, you're the decider in the middle of the room or at the wall or bolster bench. I have a feeling it's going to be a blend of in the middle of the room, legs up and legs up the wall versus bolster bench. Okay. Now, those of you that have legs up in the middle of the room, I'll try to remember to guide you how you're going to get out of that one. Okay, so feet at the wall, right? You get that sand on the feet, and as you guide back your shoulders, right? You can have your elbows for all of us out to goalpost. Sometimes when you're in the middle of the room, you cannot close your eyes because of the sand situation. You might just be a little wary of it, and that's okay. So if you do have your eyes open, you might have a soft gaze. You might blink a lot, just do a lot of blinking, and then try to center your eyes. Maybe you can close them a little bit. I think you either open and close them though. There's not a whole lot of middle path on that one, maybe a slight gaze, but feeling where the leg muscles receive the effort of the sand. Right? All that circulation flowing through the calves, the back of the knees, the inner leg, all the way up to the hip. And what's kind of nice is the hip is not, you're kind of traveling down, right, as far as downstream into the hip sockets here. So you get that nice weight, kind of weight bearing femur into hip socket here. Now, if your knees are squeezing together at the wall, that seems to be more of a problem. So you do want a little separation. The nice thing about the middle of the room is you have to create a little separation on each track, each leg. Otherwise, you lose your sand. So let the pose kind of load the bones up. Feel the shoulders back, feel the chest open. Feel the belly move with your breath. Okay, now for all of us coming out of this one today, I think it might be best, since we are choosing lifted leg, to actually slide back. But first thing, you got to get rid of your sand. So you're going to bend through the knees, and then as you let the sand motion to the side, removing it. I would say if you're at the wall, now if you're in the middle of the room, right, you can slide back off the bolster. Yeah, my teacher teaches it this way most of the time, half and half. I do half and half, but I generally roll this side. So you roll back so you're off the bolster, and then take a cobbler's pose for a moment. Let the knees point out and the feet go together. Yeah, this is a good one for the inner leg. If you have the blocks under the thighs, that can be helpful. Or you can have your feet at the wall, right? If you're at the wall, you don't have to go that far down. You can have your feet up a little bit. This feels good for the circulation in my inner hip. Okay. So remember, you don't have to bounce the legs. That's not a good idea to do any bouncing or butterfly pose. Just let them push out solid and feel the soles of the feet together. Now bring the knees to point up, and then feel the feet about hips distance. Draw the legs into the chest. Hold the backs of your thighs with the arms clutching. Now, if you've got a hold with your hands, perfect. If you wrap the arms around, just as well. And rock the sides of the pelvis, right? There's no ball in the back of the pelvis. We're just rocking across the back of the pelvis. And even the back muscles up to the shoulders. The only thing that sometimes doesn't go with it is your head, which is kind of interesting how we lock that. So you might try to roll your head a little bit side to side. We're rocking our head, sorry. We're not rolling the neck at all, just rocking side to side. And then roll to one side and let your hands help bring you up. Take a moment to sit. I would say on the bolster is always a good idea because it's just so much easier on your lower back and your hips to have your seat higher. Let the shoulders lift up towards the ears, and then see if you can roll them back. Your head tilts to one side. Gently stretch the neck. And then head tilts to the other. Yeah, imagine being completely balanced here. Find what that would mean for you. Supported by your community, feeling your head back center on top of the spine. Breathe in deep, slow and steady. And exhale, centering. Bring the hands up, either hands over the heart. Sometimes it feels good to press into the heart a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of general in the end of clasp palms together, but you be the decider. And as we breathe in wellness to ourselves, and most importantly, outwards to others, for those that are suffering, take a deep breath in. And as we exhale, bowing into the peace within your heart. Gratitude. Namaste. Thank you. All right. What a fun mixture today, huh?